Make a start if that's all right, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to our first Champions meeting of 2021, and hopefully, with respect to Zoom, the last we'll have to host on this platform. My name is Adam Dent. I work for Advent Communications, a PR and media firm based here in Coventry, Warwickshire, but working across the UK. As you all know, we flexed to live stream studio-based events at Vitsu and Ubic in recent months, but due to restrictions, we're back on Zoom, hopefully, as they say, for one night only. Today we have close to 200 people from Coventry and Warwickshire joining us, so thank you for giving up your time. We appreciate these sessions are not as interactive as we would like, but hopefully we'll be back to some sort of face-to-face meetings later this year, and the network has managed to maintain its strength and numbers during lockdown, so thank you to everybody for that. It really is appreciated. I'm going to move on very quickly as our first guest, understandably, has restricted time with us today, and we'll do the housekeeping before our second speaker. We've all known Nadhim Zahawi as the MP for Stratford for a decade, but in recent months he's become a national figure as well as the architect behind the vaccine rollout. We've chosen in the past not to have MPs on Champions, and we will be keeping this strictly apolitical, but we felt his role is so keen to return to some sort of normality that it will be really interesting to hear just how it has been done. Nadhim has, of course, a background in business. In 2000, he founded YouGov, the leading market research company, and floated the firm on the London Stock Exchange in 2005. I'm sure he will tell you that the firm first really came to prominence when it was the only company to predict that Will Young would beat Gareth Gates in the final of Pop Idol, when all the others went the other way. In January 2010, he stood down from YouGov to run for election. In 2018, the then Prime Minister Theresa May appointed Nadhim as Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Children and Families. He held this position until July 2019, when he was appointed by Boris Johnson as a Minister for Business and Industry at Bayes. And as I say, in November, he was also made Minister for COVID vaccine deployment. So Nadhim, thank you and welcome this afternoon. I've just had a ping on my phone to say figures are out. So can you bring us up to date with where we are vaccine wise?
Yeah, it's been a good day vaccinating yesterday. I know some people on my social media were slightly concerned that the previous couple of days, the numbers were beginning to dip. But we are now at 18.24 million people with the first dose and over 600,000 with the second dose. But we are beginning now to reserve second doses as well, which will really start in March, sort of this final week of February, a few obviously from the early January first dose, and then obviously in March. So we'll do both, and we're confident that by mid-April we would have offered the vaccine to all 9 cohorts in phase 1. That's 32 million people, and then by the end of July we would have offered the vaccine to all adults in the United Kingdom. We've got millions of doses coming through, and I can speak to both the supply challenge. Many people on this call, and I feel like I'm coming home here, virtually maybe, and I hope one day physically we can meet very soon, as Adam says, as we take back our lives and take back our our freedoms, and of course reopen our economy gradually. But the supply challenge has been immense. I'm a chemical engineer by background, so manufacturing is something I know about, and obviously vaccine manufacturing is not my specialty, but I know in any new novel vaccine manufacturing process there's always challenges, and you get lumpiness, and then it very quickly sort of stabilizes, and you then go back and process, sort of engineer to make it more efficient, to get more yield out of the process. But that is continuing to happen now. I'm very confident I've got very clear line of sight all the way through to the April deadline, and then the July deadline. We've got tens of millions of doses coming through.
And was the dip in numbers over the last 48 hours, that was supply, was it, rather than logistics?
No, so supply has been finite, as in it remains tight, but we began to reserve second doses because what we're trying to do. So on the deployment side, that's the sort of supply side I've just spoke about. On the deployment side, what we've built is what people on the call will understand is an infrastructure that can deploy many hundreds of thousands of doses a day. We got to a couple of Saturdays ago 1,000 doses per minute being delivered, and we can do more than that. And we are about to. So what you're going to see is a doubling of the rate of the first sort of 10, 11 weeks to get to that mid-February deadline that we had for the top 4 cohorts, the 15 million. We're going to double the rate because you've got to keep going with first doses to get to the 32 million and do your second doses, because everyone who's had a first dose will get their second dose within 12 weeks. But the deployment infrastructure is vast. We've got hospital hubs, national vaccination centres, community pharmacy, about 200 now, be 400 of those very, very soon, delivering vaccines. And of course, the backbone of the infrastructure is the primary care network. So 5 or 6 GP surgeries coming together, deciding who will lead, and then the others will support, with a sort of a patient population of about 50,000, 30 to 50,000. That infrastructure is vast, and we've got to keep it going, got to keep it focused and motivated. With it, of course, is the army of volunteers. We've got 80,000 vaccinator volunteers, 200,000 people volunteering as marshals and so on. I've got the armed forces embedded in the program, and the private sector, really important. Not only the manufacturers and the brilliant people at AstraZeneca and at Pfizer and BioNTech and Novavax, which will come online soon, and of course Moderna, but also the distribution, the back-end distribution for the whole deployment architecture is Boots back-end distribution company. It is Superdrug's back-end distribution company. It's a company called Movianto. And then the front end that delivers to the GPs and all the other channels of distribution, as I call them, is DHL. Of course, the NHS family is the anchor to this whole thing. They are absolutely, without the NHS, this would not be possible. But the NHS is supported by volunteers, our armed forces, and private companies, great private companies who've stood up and said, we will do this, we'll make this work. It is the best of what the United Kingdom has to offer. If you step back a second and think of COVID as the pandemic has challenged liberal democracies around the world, very hard for liberal democracies to, whether it's on enforcement, on quarantine or anything else. But, and this is the big but, which is a real positive, the one thing these islands are good at, the United Kingdom is good at, is organization. You saw it in the Olympics in 2012. You're seeing it again in the vaccine deployment. So in many ways, the silver lining of this terrible virus is actually, when it comes to vaccine deployment, it plays to our strength in the United Kingdom. The 4 nations delivering this incredible vaccine deployment, the largest vaccination program in the history of this country.
When did you have to start planning that? So you got the call in November. Is it a sort of call where you think, obviously you've got to do your duty, but this is a bit of a high risk post. If it doesn't go well, we know how the media have been over the last few months. And when did you start planning? How do you start planning something like that?
Well, I have to admit, I had a few text messages from some friends saying, are you sure you really want to do this job? It's a bit of a poison chalice. And of course, it is probably the most important job I will ever do for my country, for the country that's given me and my family everything. And I don't think there'll be a job bigger than this, because our way out of this pandemic is the vaccine program. It's not a silver bullet, because I think, and we could talk more about this in our conversation, because I still think you're going to need surge testing, our capability in the UK in genomic sequencing to get all the different virus variants sequenced rapidly. And of course, isolation, which is how we are keeping things like the South African variant and the Brazilian variant out of this country. And in terms of infection rates, the dominant strain in the UK, both vaccines work really effectively on, which is really important. But as Brigadier Phil Prosser, some of you may become familiar with Phil Prosser because he stood next to the Prime Minister in the press conferences at Downing Street said, he said, Minister, it's a bit like, standing up a national supermarket chain in about a month and then growing it 20% every week. So that was the challenge. To be absolutely fair, I've got an amazing team, and the lead senior responsible officer, the SRO is the term in the civil service, is a brilliant lady called Emily Lawson. They've been doing a lot of the work and a lot of the thinking and planning for this, before I came on board in the middle of November, sort of a few months before that, to make sure that they were thinking through how we deploy. But we had to move very rapidly and make some, big calls, big decisions, especially when you're dealing with a vaccine like Pfizer-BioNTech, which is at minus 70 degrees centigrade, and that cold chain movement, which is why we went to people like Boots and Superdrug, because their distribution arms are incredibly used to dealing with cold chain movement of pharmaceuticals.
Any resistance from those, from not the companies you chose in the end? Were some held their hand up and said, no, we can't help you, or was it first time with everyone?
There'll be, well, there were those who wanted to help, but were clearly just didn't have the wherewithal. We had to very rapidly learn about fridges, and I could probably write a book about the types of fridges, because not only have you got to keep it at minus 70 degrees, it has to be stable at minus, can't fluctuate. So there were lots of brilliant manufacturers, brilliant people who came forward, but obviously also some who were less capable. And those are the sort of the decisions you have to make, and people on this call will understand. In business, you have to make these decisions almost daily. When I built up YouGov, there's always, when I look back on, and everyone goes, wow, what a success. You IPO it in 2005, it becomes a unicorn. It's over $1 billion business, incredible. But I can tell you, there are always moments where you look back and think, my God, if I'd made that decision in 2007 and 2008, where we were going to buy the US biggest market research company, and then the financial market crashed, YouGov wouldn't exist today. And it was those calls that sometimes you have to make, and there are many in this program that you look back and think, if we hadn't, for example, taken the risk very early on with the Vaccines Task Force, and credit to Boris Johnson for backing Kate Bingham and Clive Dix and Ian McCubbin. These are all, if anyone knows anything about vaccine manufacturing and pharmaceuticals, these are sort of household names. On spec, on risk taking, they optioned these vaccines. We invested in manufacturing in the UK, in Oxfordshire, in Harwell, in Braintree, in Wrexham for the fill and finish, without even having a vaccine approved. It was done because it was the right thing to do, and the experts who had put together a short list of the vaccines, the 7, now there's an 8th as well, yeah. The CureVac deal we've just announced, and we can talk more about that, which is sort of future-proofing our vaccination program. So if the virus mutates, we are always going to be in a position to produce the next vaccine variant in the UK and manufacture at a scale in the UK and have it ready for 2022 and 2023 and so on. A lot of work.
Do you feel your history as a business person helped you in this role? Do you think that was key? A lot of politicians have been politicians, or have come through the sort of political system, but do you think being a business person was A, one reason why you were chosen, and B, has that helped you?
I did say to the boss, I said, I'm grateful to you because it's taken me 10 years in Parliament, and although Theresa May gave me a great job to be Children and Families Minister, truly an important role in government, but it's taken me 10 years for someone to give me an operational job, which I can apply some of my skills that I obviously learned at university as a chemical engineer, because those engineers on the school will know it's about process engineering. It's about focusing on the material decisions you have to make on that day that impact that week or that fortnight sprint that you are in. It's focusing on data and evidence and being able to be evidence-led and evidence-based decision-making. So it took me a decade of being in Parliament as the Member of Parliament for Stratford-on-Avon, which is a privilege and an honour, before someone actually gave me a job, which I think I'm a little bit good at. But I'm very grateful to Boris Johnson for at least allowing me the opportunity to be able to deliver something, as I say, for the country that's given me and my family everything.
And you touched on the fact there that in this country, private and public sector work well together. Have you any idea of whether the difficulties they've had in continental countries have been because they haven't got that history? Do we do that better than other people?
Well, I think we did it really well in the sense that we have a really well-established both research, so scientific research community, as well as commercial community in life sciences, in pharmaceuticals. We may not have had a large vaccine manufacturing capability. We do now, and we're going to increase it even more. But when this pandemic hit, we really didn't have a big vaccine manufacturing capability in the UK. But we had people like Kate Bingham, like Ian McCubbin, like Clive Dix, who understand and led, GlaxoSmithKline's vaccines business, and we were able to bring them in, and they dropped everything and basically stood up the vaccines task force with some brilliant civil servants as well. And I have to say, our civil service has been phenomenal. Names that will become one day household names when the book's written about this. Madeleine McTurnan, Ruth Todd, who's of our parish. She lives very close to me, completely by coincidence. She was seconded from the MOD, great civil servant from the MOD. Usually procuring stuff for very secret stuff for submarines. That did all the procurement on the vaccines. And Nick Elliott, who some of you would have read about in some of the papers. Those people literally scoured the world, looked at over 100 different vaccine candidates, produced a short list of about 24, then brought those down to 7, where we negotiated early, way before BioNTech had even done the deal with Pfizer. We were the first country to talk to BioNTech. And then when they got together with Pfizer, we were the first country to sign a contract with them, which is why we got the early doses from them. Other countries, the European Commission, did well, but they were about 4 to 6 months behind us by then. Big risk taking in the sense that the Prime Minister backed us. Vaccine Task Force sits in Bays, so I always had a view of the supply side until he gave me the role in the Department of Health and Bays, so I combined supply and deployment. But he when we went for him to say, look, we've got to build up our manufacturing capability to be ready if the vaccine works, but we need 320 million. He made the money available, and we built that vaccine manufacturing capability in the UK, so that when the Oxford team did succeed, that we were ready to manufacture at scale here in the UK. We've done the same with a vaccine that will come online probably end of the year and next year in Scotland. It's a French company called Valneva, and that's a whole inactivated virus. So currently the vaccines we are deploying work on the spike of the coronavirus virus. The Valneva vaccine is a whole inactivated virus that makes up the vaccine, which we have great hope for if and when we need the annual vaccination program in the way we do annual flu vaccination programs.
And we've had a question from a county councillor, Keith Condacore, talking about how we talk about vaccination rates, and in some areas of our region, they vary due to demographic and people's ability to get transport. If you take this area, I think Warwickshire Golf Club, I think Stoneleigh Park, but for people who live in towns, it's a bit more difficult. Is the answer to that? He's asking how you level that up. Is that the community pharmacies that you talk about? Is that the role for them?
So from day one, when we designed the deployment, and the backbone of the deployment is primary care, the GPs, the NHS population and other indices like deprivation. So we've got a daily part of our work is to look at how do we reach the hard to reach groups, and so when we chose the rollout or the standing up of the infrastructure to vaccinate, that was very much part of our design, if I describe it as such. We continue to look at that now in terms of access, and I think it's a really good question to ask about access for those people, because what we're seeing is groups that some people, rightly, some people are concerned about, if you provide the right access, a pop-up vaccination site in a place they trust, whether it's the Abbas Mosque in Birmingham, or a cathedral in Salisbury, or the Al Hikmah Centre in Batley, or wherever it happens to be. Where I went to Hackney with Diane Abbott to look at the Haredi Hasidic Jewish community being vaccinated, after 8:30 p.m. on a Saturday night, where Hackney Council, working with the NHS, backed the Hatzola ambulance service, trusted by the Hasidic Jewish community, to put up a vaccination centre. We vaccinated 364 Haredi community and Muslims as well in there. So we now that the NHS is deploying, looking at postcode by postcode, and where are the gaps and where are the populations that we really need to reach. And we're using, yes, community pharmacies to fill those gaps. Everything from a bus that goes in and vaccinates to pop-up vaccination sites. And
a question from somebody you know very well, Tony Bird, just saying that once the pandemic is tamed, perhaps in Q3 this year, will the economy recover quickly? And do you think, because we're the first industrialized nation out of it, certainly in Europe, that it might be boom time?
I do think that if you look at what what some of the members of the committee from the Bank of England are saying on this, Andy Haldane wrote very recently about this, Tony, that they see pent-up demand in the economy, which will certainly help the recovery. You don't have long to wait, because on the 3rd of March, the Chancellor will be on his feet at the dispatch box, and he'll be able to set out exactly what the shape of the economy will look like, and what help he is putting into the economy. We put £280 billion of support in the economy. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has said it's one of the most comprehensive economic packages to deal with the COVID pandemic of any nation in the world. I'm certainly confident that we will see people, really stepping up and coming out of COVID in a way that will be dynamic. I see it every day in our great manufacturing industries in the West Midlands, whether it's JLR and their recovery already, or others that are looking to make sure that their business is fit and ready to take advantage of the gradual opening up of the economy. The important thing is to be cautious, to do this gradually, as the roadmap has now set out, because we want it to be a one-way street, one-way direction towards that reopening of the economy, and not having to go back to the severe lockdown that we've been all enduring.
Can I just ask you on a personal level, how have you coped? What's the commitment like? What's the, have the little Zahawi seen much of you, or is it, what have the hours been like?
I'm very lucky in that I've got an unbelievably supportive family. My wife Lana and the kids completely understand, are, as you would expect, incredibly proud of Dad and the work that we do. We work 7 days a week. It's on the whole probably about between 17 and 19-hour days, but I'm not alone. I've got an incredible team, and it is truly humbling. I stand on the shoulders of heroes. I said that at the dispatch box, of the not only my direct team in the deployment program, but also the tens of thousands, the army of volunteers, the doctors, nurses, pharmacists, everyone who is marshalling people through the vaccination centres, and of course our armed forces and the private sector have really stepped up. The best of Britain coming together.
And just on a local level, obviously you are still a local, but how do you feel that Coventry and Warwickshire is placed to recover? We've had a couple of questions we can't get to about manufacturing, what have you, and costs coming down, hopefully. post-Brexit so we can compete. But what about Stratford District and Coventry and Warwickshire? Again, it is a very joined up area. Will that help us in the months going forward?
Very hard hit in Stratford District because the economy is so dependent on obviously tourism, on the hospitality industry, on the creative industries, and of course the performing arts have been incredibly hard hit. First in, and although there's been tremendous help, I work very closely with the RSC to make sure that they got the support they needed, and of course the Birthplace Trust as well, and the smaller organizations in my constituency, and of course the hospitality sector as well. But I think, look, the important thing is that as we come out of this with the the stepped approach to the opening up of the economy, that we do this in a way that allows the vaccination program to continue to be as effective as we're seeing. We're seeing some really today from Public Health Scotland on the effectiveness of both vaccines against serious infection and hospitalization, even with the over 80s at 81% effectiveness for the Oxford vaccine. So really, really positive signs, and we just need to be cautious and patient and do this.
Oh, we're beginning to lose. I think we're beginning to lose you, Nadhim. Can you hear us still?
I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, and just lastly, obviously the Champions here is part of the LEP and its new chair. So Windrum is coming on in a short while. Those sorts of bodies are going to play a key part, aren't they, in driving the economy?
Very much so. And Coventry and Warwickshire, one of the great things is I remember when I was on the base select committee, and we were embarking on the LEP program. This is sort of whatever, 9 years ago now. Yeah. And Louise came in and did that amazing presentation to it was called the Business Select Committee then, and opened up by saying 100,000 people live and work in Coventry and Warwickshire. That is why you should take us seriously. And I do think that with Sarah is going to be an exciting one. Brilliant. Thank you.
No, Nadhim, we appreciate you spending longer than you got. So that is great. Hopefully you're a bit politer than Piers Morgan to you. So I'm sure anybody of any political colour sends you the best wishes, and fingers crossed for the next few months. And thank you very much indeed. Cheers, Nadhim. Thank you very much indeed. I'd say thank you to Nadhim. Thank you to everybody for joining us today in these strange times. As ever, Champions events are designed to keep you informed of what's happening across Coventry and Warwickshire, and also to hear from those who hail from or have strong connections with our area. We have some first-time people on the call today, so thank you. Please do contact Nick Erskine online if you'd like to become a permanent part of our network. Nick is on this session and his details are on the Champions website, so please do get in contact with him. Our hashtag today is ChampsFeb. So please tweet away and do use the chat function to make your point or ask a question. Today, we're going to hear from 3 more people, all with interesting stories to tell. Appropriate enough, we're going to hear from someone who's been on our screens about COVID almost as much as Nadhim Zahawi. We're going to hear from the aforementioned new chair of the Coventry Warwickshire LEP, and from the leader of a national organisation which now has part of its operation here in Coventry and Warwickshire. Lawrence Young was until last year virologist and professor of molecular oncology at the University of Warwick. He is now virologist and professor of molecular oncology at the University of Warwick, but also a TV star. In the past few months, he's been doing 30 broadcasts a week and has appeared on many different networks: Voice of America, Turkish TV, CGTN TV China. The one I like the best is KSL 102.7 FM, which makes him sound a little bit like a late night DJ. New Australia, France 24 and Al Jazeera. And of course, last night, Midlands Today. Fortunately, he's still humble, and we were able to reach him through the university's PR guru, Peter Dunn, and not through a showbiz agent, I'm glad to say. But Lawrence, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And I take it you were very interested, obviously professionally, but also personally, in what you heard there from Nadhim.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic job, and it's something we can be really proud of. And if you think about where we were even a few months ago, who could have believed we'd be in a situation now where so many people will be vaccinated, and where we can see light at the end of the lockdown tunnel.
Yes, let's hope so. I mean, it's a bit of a sort of Kennedy assassination moment. Can you remember where you were or when you first heard about COVID?
Yeah, I was. There's a network of us interested in viruses, and I can remember very clearly, actually, just being in my office in January last year, towards mid to late January, when the first few cases were coming through, and then when the genome sequence came out, and we all realised this was a coronavirus. And I can remember it quite clearly, thinking then that, oh, this will just probably be like SARS. It will be a local thing. It's unlikely to spread. SARS didn't spread that much, but it was sort of more academic interest, really. Although I do have very close contacts with colleagues in China and in Hong Kong, so I was aware that they were getting rather concerned about it.
But it's interesting that somebody with your academic expertise was still of the belief that it might not come into a pandemic. I mean, a lot of people have been saying that we are, if it's want a better term, due a pandemic, or it is a risk. Has that been talk in your circles for several years, or not?
It has, and I think we all felt that there would be something like this, and that actually, to be frank, that many of us, and it's difficult academically because we're always wanting funding for our own research area, but there'd been a big concern that somehow virology, people weren't paying attention as much to viruses as they should. I mean, there's been a lot in microbiology. There are two camps. There are people who work on bacteria and people work on viruses, and they never really talk to each other at all until now, I have to say. But one of the big things, of course, has been antibiotic resistance, and there's lots of effort gone into that. And I don't know if you want to go on to, you might not want to go into this, Adam, but over the last 20, 30 years since I've been in the business, the amount of academic interest and investment in virology has waned considerably in the United Kingdom. There are very, very few virology labs, and we'd always been concerned that something like this would happen, and thinking about lessons from HIV, for instance. So I think many of us were concerned about it, but I don't think we expected it to come from a coronavirus.
And if you were a betting man, which I'm sure you're not, WHO have reported back from Wuhan now, what would be your suspicion of where it started? Market, lab? What's your hunch?
I don't think it's a lab. I think if you look at and we can look at detail in terms of the genetics of this. So it looks like it's something that has occurred in bats. Bats have coronavirus infections. It's gone through another animal, and then there's been some recombination event. So it's come into humans probably through the eating, or somehow through probably one of these pangolins. So through the meat trade, actually, I suspect that's what's happened. I don't think it's been. It's difficult to know whether it's been released from a laboratory. I suspect not. Although, of course, there still needs to be some more investigation, I guess. But I think it's just come through the meat trade in China.
And has there been anything about the spread of it, which as an academic in this area has surprised you?
Yes, I think the little bit of, I wouldn't say complacency, but the thought that we all had originally was really by analogy with SARS and with MERS, that Middle East respiratory syndrome virus, where we knew that spread was predominantly from people with symptoms. So you didn't actually spread it unless you got sick. And that's what we all thought. And I mean, if people get visibly sick, you can manage the disease better. What we hadn't accounted for, because it's never happened before, as far as we're aware, with human coronavirus infection, is that you can spread it when you're asymptomatic or before you even develop symptoms. And that's been the biggest single challenge, and probably the biggest single reason why the coronavirus has taken hold so much worldwide, is because before you even know you're sick, you can spread it. And up to 30% of people don't even know they've got it, but they can spread it. That's the difference. And that's what I think we were so surprised.
And looking at it from a neutral position, obviously Nadhim is heavily invested politically and personally in it. How extraordinary compared to other times has the speed of the development of the vaccine been?
I mean, I think vaccine development has been incredible around the world, and I think there was a sort of a readiness almost. There was almost a sort of pent up, folks waiting for something like this. So these things haven't just happened overnight, by the way. So there's been a lot of interest in the mRNA vaccines, the vaccine from Pfizer, BioNTech, and the Moderna vaccine. And of course, they've gone through years and years of development. I've been involved in some of that peripherally. And so these things don't happen overnight, but they were prepared. They were there ready and waiting, if you like, for this, as were the Oxford group, who'd been working on their type of vaccine-based technology for many, many years. What we lacked, and what we're going to have to learn about in the future, is more about diagnostics, actually, because we don't have a good base in diagnostics in this country. We don't have a good base either academically or indeed in industry in terms of rapid diagnostics. And I think we've learned the lesson of that. But what was waiting there were all these vaccine companies around the world ready to pounce on this.
And why are we not good at that? Is it just there's been a brain drain, or we've allowed someone to develop that expertise rather than doing it ourselves?
No, I think it's the lack of investment. I think there's been a lack of investment in diagnostics. There's been a lack of investment in antiviral drugs. We're still not hearing enough about that, actually. Antivirals are very difficult to develop, but most of the big pharma companies pulled out of antiviral developments 20 odd years ago in the UK. And we don't have that base in diagnostics in the same way, for instance, that Germany has as a country. So I think that, coupled with the sort of public health infrastructure, really affected the way that we sort of managed the pandemic in the very early days.
And it's obviously, we're renowned for a lot of things industry-wise, and Champions is predominantly a business group. Is there a chance for us economically to benefit from the legacy? Presumably, you won't have to make much of a case for investment after all this. Is there a space in the market for transferable skills that we have in the Midlands?
Absolutely. I think in diagnostics in particular, actually, because we are quite good at it, both academically, in collaboration with various partners, including University Hospital Coventry and Warwickshire. I mean, we've done a lot of work together through the pandemic, not only validating new tests, but also helping to develop novel diagnostics through the university. I think this is an area, along with sort of the big data side of things and our strength in devices and in artificial intelligence, where we can really do something quite significant. And I hope that out of this, if there are any, I don't want to be opportunistic, but if there are any silver linings is probably not the right word, but nevertheless, we want to be in a position where in future we don't have the problem we had at the beginning of this, where we're really prepared. And to do that, we need not only a good academic base in diagnostics, we need a good industrial base too. Yeah.
And if you can just touch on it, what's it been like for you personally? You know, I mean this very respectfully, an academic I didn't know of until 18 months ago, and now you're sort of on the TV screens. What is it, a new discipline? How have you found it? Has it interrupted the day-to-day work? Tell me, there's a colleague as well, isn't there? Is it Mike Tilsley?
Yeah, Mike Tilsley's on. Yeah, he's the epidemiology guy.
Well,
yeah.
I feel I know his living room radiator almost intimately now. It's in the same place every time. No, but what's it been like for you?
Well, it's a bit manic actually. It did start not long afterwards, and after sort of, I think it was about May last year. And then it's just gone crazy ever since then. It's been quite strange, actually, in the sense that it's a completely different world. We're all encouraged, quite rightly, as academics, to get involved in public engagement. It's a big part of trying to break down that barrier, the sort of the ivory towers of academia, if you like. But it's been interesting for lots of different reasons. Interesting in the sense that, a lot of the time you're expected to know everything about a subject and asked to comment on things beyond your personal remit, and it's easy to do that, so you've got to protect yourself from that type of thing. You've got to really say, well, actually my remit isn't this, I'm a virologist, I work in immunology, this is the bit that I understand. But you're expected to be an expert in everything. Indeed, that's the same as Mike would tell you. Mike Kills is an epidemiologist. He's not a virologist. This means nothing to the general public, but we all have our own different disciplines. And there's also sort of what I call the geopolitical angle, because that's got a bit difficult at times, I have to admit.
I was going to say, as an academic in the UK, have you been put through the rinser by EU colleagues and others?
Yeah, I have, and that's been quite interesting, and sort of not defending the UK situation, but trying to understand, to be frank, why there has been some very odd decision making in Europe, actually. And of course, the big political thing was how come we were able to so rapidly approve vaccines when the European Medicines Agency was so slow, and the degree to which that was to do with Brexit. So that was difficult. I guess the other thing, honestly, was when and where you comment on things and what the angles are. So with folk like Al Jazeera or Russia Today. Russia Today have been driving me crazy, actually, and I'm very, very careful about what I do, actually, because it's very easy to get seduced into this and to say yes to everything. But there are certain areas where I say I'm not going to comment on that because that's a political stance, and I think it's important to be open and to be able to communicate with Al Jazeera and Russia Today, but only on the basis of the science, not on the basis of the politics.
But I presume this level of expertise helps sell the University of Warwick globally like nothing else, doesn't it?
Well, it's quite interesting because I've forgotten the number of times now, particularly when I'm doing an international thing. It happened the other day when I was doing Australia radio. He said, "Where the hell are you? Where is Warwick? Where I said Coventry. What's Coventry? Where is that?" They don't know where. So it is good actually for that. And I think one of the things we've been able to do, and between Mike and I think we've done so much of this now. Even considering there are some other local universities that are very, very good as well. We have somehow, I don't know how we've done it, but we sort of cornered the market really. And I think it's really helped. I hope it's helped, not only for people to recognize the strength of the University of Warwick, but also how enormously, how we have a very, very productive region. I'm always at pains to point out that, we've got in Coventry and Warwickshire, there's a lot of activity going on. And, I hope it's represented in the way that we were able to present ourselves in these various media fora that we're involved in.
Will you miss the media bit in a year's time?
I think I probably will, actually. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, and it's taken me away a little bit from the day job, although we are doing lots of work on COVID now with UHCW and with other colleagues, and it's created some really interesting opportunities to engage with biotech, actually. So now, this is talking to a number of different companies and hoping that we can do some work together. So that's been great. It's a bit manic though, because it starts very early in the morning. I mean, this morning I did LBC at 7 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes with these, particularly with America, or they want you to do things late at night. So if you're not careful, you could do it all day. And I think it needs to settle down a bit. I'll miss it, but I've also enjoyed it, and I hope that through it we've been able to really promote the region.
Well, I remember hearing somebody said he was in a similar spotlight to you, and he said a year later nobody wanted to speak to him. He used to open his fridge, the light came on, and he started to do an interview. So maybe that'll happen to you in a year's time. Well, look, thank you very much. You and Mike and everybody, all the folks at the university are representing the area. I'm sure we'll see you over the next few months, or hear you at strange hours on the radio. But thank you very much for joining us today, Lawrence. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Cheers. Thank you. We are running a bit over. We were told that the Dean would only have a quarter of an hour, but I think, hearing about that from somebody directly on the call was worth letting it run a little bit. So thank you for your patience. As you know, and as we've mentioned, the Coventry and Warwickshire Champions initiative is run under the auspices of the Coventry and Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership, which from the end of next month will have a new chair. Many of you will know Sarah Windrum, who's been a passionate advocate for this region and for the digital sector in particular for several years, and she succeeds Nick Abel. Now, I think Nick Abel likes to say that you're taking over on April Fool's Day, but we'll make it March the 31st. I certainly don't want to offend the new chair of a client. But Sarah, lots of people know you, but probably don't know your background. Tell us about, are you native to here? I noticed you did an English degree. Tell us a little bit about your background.
I did do an English degree, yes. So I'm from the South Coast, actually, originally from sunny Portsmouth. And I went to university in Oxford, and as you said, to study English literature. And that was, I was the first person in my family to go to university at all. It was a real surprise. Went to a comprehensive school just outside Portsmouth. And that experience, really changed my life. And it changed my life because I learned so much in terms of about my own potential and about my aspiration. And I think actually it kind of, I still talk about it as my greatest personal achievement, because not only did I go to one of the top universities in the country, but I also left with a first-class honours degree, which in the first 6 weeks of term in my first year, I did not think I was going to do. So, it was kind of testament to the hard work that I had, but I think also that the belief in me that was there from my tutors in particular. So I'm a very big advocate of education and of the education system.
To be fair though, you probably put everybody off from the rest of the family following you, don't you? You know, it's one thing being the first to go, but go to one of the best and then get a first class honours. I think I'd have given up.
So that's absolutely true. No one else in my family has gone to university. My brother's in the RAF though, and they are paying for him to do a degree now, a few years on. But no, you're absolutely right. But I think, you know, it was just a wonderful experience in terms of, as I said, the people I was with and the support that I had, and you know, yes, it was one of the best universities in the country, but I see that support with our universities here for Coventry and Warwick as well. And I'm actually doing an MSc at the moment at Coventry. And, you know, they've been brilliant in terms of the support they've given us, trying to do an MSc, do the day job, homeschool at the same time. So, you know, I think those supportive educational establishments are so important.
But I've over the recent weeks, I've chatted to lots of people with that level of degree, and they still get caught out sometimes by those school questions when they're doing the homeschooling.
Honestly, it's been a bit of a struggle. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And my daughter's been doing problem maths, which you've got to kind of explain. She's only 9, and you've got to explain how you work out the sums, and it's much more of a narrative now in maths. And obviously I'm doing a bit of that with my MSc, so I sort of feel like we're both kind of studying the same thing at the moment, just at different ends of the spectrum.
And tell us about your company, Emerald, what it does, you know, how many people it employs, where it's based, that sort of thing.
So we're a technology company based in Leamington. We're predominantly IT support, so kind of day-to-day operational support, and we've got a help desk at our offices in Leamington. But we also do project management, and that is helping businesses kind of streamline their operational processes using digital. So using mobile and cloud solutions to kind of help them to do what they do on a day-to-day basis, but to do it in a more productive and more efficient way.
And I presume, you know, never has the timing for that been more apposite, with people having to flip straight from working from home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had already been kind of speaking to our customers and implementing remote working solutions long before COVID. But yeah, when the first announcement for the first lockdown came, you know, all of our customers we've been having these kind of high-level conversations with, it suddenly became an absolute priority. And I shared this with Sean Farnell as well, who is on the board at the Local Enterprise Partnership too, and he's an accountant. And we both sort of said we'd never worked so hard for so little money at the beginning of the first lockdown, because yeah, it was all about just keeping our customers going and keeping them operational.
I mean, we just heard, you know, it's great to hear. We just heard a minister praising the performance of our LEP. You've been a board member for several years. For those on the call who've sort of heard of the LEP and touched on it vaguely, just explain to people about the sort of private-public partnership and really what it does.
So I think the LEP area of geography is just so important to how successful we are. And, you know, you heard from Nadhim about Louise Bennett, Chief Executive of the Chamber of Commerce, at the very beginning, setting out why Coventry and Warwickshire was the right geography for a LEP. And, you know, I absolutely fundamentally agree with that. And huge thanks to Louise and the Chamber, the FSB, and all the team that came together, because they have made the geography the right size that you can do things at scale, but you can really understand your grassroots activity. And I think, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the fact that it's private-public partnership. And I think I feel very honoured and very privileged that the things that I kind of get to see and be involved in. And I think what other people will probably see in the media is some of the capital investment, some of the direct funding that we get. But what perhaps is you know not quite as covered in the media is the kind of influence that business has, and the opportunity that the business voice has to kind of be heard in that environment when you're talking about economic development. And you know, I run a business with 15 people. I'm a very small company, and yet what I bring to that table, and what all the directors bring to that table, is our own experience. And our own networks and our own connections. And I think that's really what makes it work. The geography is right, the makeup of the board is right, and we all come with that, you know, with the Coventry and Warwickshire and the success of our region in mind. And I'm hugely passionate about our local enterprise partnership and what we do, and you know how we influence.
And you're stepping up at a vital time, really. I mean, obviously, big announcements from Jaguar Land Rover in the last week or so. You talk about private-public partnerships. Obviously, announcement of an ambition to create a gigafactory, which will be a partnership like that. It really is a tipping point in our region at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you referenced the gigafactory, and I think again it's projects like that I'm just hugely passionate about and hugely proud of the role that the local enterprise partnership plays in bringing those people together. You know, I very much look at us as a bridge between the sort of public sector world and the private sector and the needs of business. And you know, UK BIC, I know that you were there. Like I watched it live just before Christmas, and you know that's another example of how the private sector and the public sector coming together. You know, speaking to government, having that message about Coventry and Warwickshire, really pushing our sector strengths. You know, that's the result of that multi-million pounds worth of investment in our region, high skilled jobs of the future in our region. And yeah, I very much hope to see Gigafactory as a next step in that project.
And I know very much your heart lies in the digital sector, and people talk about Silicon Spa and that, and it's sort of a community within itself, but it has grown enormously even in the last 5 years. I think just for those who are sort of the digitally uninitiated, what is the sort of main strands within that sector, but how important is it in terms of transferable skills and also what they produce transferring into everyday business?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely crucial, and I think it's interesting. This is certainly one of the strands that I want to take forward as chair, because we've got you know, a very strong automotive advanced manufacturing base, and we've got a very strong digital games interactive experience sector, creative sector, and how we bring those worlds together is, I think, what's going to kind of really set us apart. It was very interesting. I don't know if people on the call have managed to attend anything at Interactive Futures last week, but that's the showcase that we've put on now for the last 3 years for the game sector in particular, but it involves the kind of wider interactive media sector as well. And interestingly in that, Jo Twist, who's the chief exec of the UK trade body for interactive entertainment, she talked about this being the experience age. You know, we've moved away from the information age to the experience age. And I think when you think about the skills Silicon Spa has got in terms of mobile gaming in particular, in terms of interaction with our, you know, with our mobiles, the user experience of that, that's going to be crucial when we look at so many different things, the future of our towns, our city centres, the future of mobility. So much of our world is going to be, you know, evolved through our use of mobile. I think you saw that in COVID with the QR codes. I mean, QR codes have been around for ages, and suddenly we're all using them.
They made a comeback. Yeah,
they made a comeback.
One of our new champions, Andre Ferraru, wanted to ask Nadhim about wearable technology playing a role going forward in safer working in terms of environments, distancing, that sort of thing. That's a classic example, isn't it, of how that can work?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting is that we've seen the appetite very much from the game sector. Previously, they have been more focused on, you know, games for entertainment, particularly the mobile games, the work for hire studios that you know, we've got incredible talent in Silicon Spa, and you know, they're working on global brands. But certainly we've seen some appetite from them to engage further, thinking about VR classrooms, thinking about immersive experiences to help with our mental health. You know, we've seen that they've got a real appetite to do some of this, to transfer some of their skills. And yeah, absolutely, I want us to be harnessing that and to really kind of make a name for ourselves globally in that area.
And obviously we've talked about it now, hopefully with that light at the end of the COVID tunnel getting bigger, the LEP's got a role to play in helping the economy sort of reset itself, hasn't it? And I know that the LEP itself is harnessing the power of the different business groups that it's got in for its reset strategy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right. So obviously previous to being appointed as chair, I chair the Digital and Creative Business Group. And there are business sort of subset of business groups where a lot of the industry engagement happens, where a lot of the the kind of communication and the feedback from industry happens. And certainly the process of the reset framework, we're calling it. So the idea is that it's very much industry led. It's very much about action. I think I heard Paula saw Paula talking in the chat earlier about Find It in CW, which is one of the things that's come out of that around connecting people and putting this platform together. But yeah, it's very much about action. I think often when businesses hear the word strategy, we're concerned that it's something glossy that's going to sit on people's coffee tables, and this is absolutely not that. This is about what we're going to deliver, as you said, kind of through reset and getting our economy to thrive again. And it's the engagement with the business groups has been so powerful in ensuring that is front and centre. And the business group itself, so just to tell you about what the Digital Creative Business Group have done, we've made 3 priorities. So one of our priorities was freelancers, because we noticed that actually we have an incredible freelancer ecosystem, but that they aren't necessarily fully understood or fully appreciated. So that was one of the areas that we wanted to focus on. And obviously that's fed into the reset framework. We also wanted to look at digital engagement with creative spaces. So I know part of that was actually the live streaming with champions and putting you in touch with Noisegate Studios, who are a member of the Digital Creative Business Group. And also we had the tech challenge, and that was specifically looking at how we use technology to support the high street and to encourage people back to the high street when it's safe to do so. The tech challenge is being rolled out at the moment, and that model actually really worked for us. So we're keen to look at what we might do there again. But yes, the reset framework is the kind of strategic principles. The main objective is Coventry and Warwickshire being a safe place to live, work and invest. And part of that is us shouting about what we're doing here, as Lawrence has been doing so well in the media. So I think that's what's going to drive that forward.
So plenty to get your teeth into on March the 31st. And I have to say, I will recheck those press releases now I found out about your degree before I send them over to you. Look, Sarah, thank you very much. Everybody on the call, I'm sure, wishes you well. We're all supporters of the LEP. Lots of people on this call are actively involved, and it's important that the private sector as well as the public sector stay involved. So Sarah Windrum, thank you very much indeed. Please stay with us. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our final guest, and thank you for bearing with us in time. As I say, I think it was a bonus having Nadhim on for as long as we did. The Financial Ombudsman Service has been sorting out complaints between financial businesses and their customers since it was set up by Parliament 20 years ago. Its service is free consumers, and every year well over 1 million people contact the service about problems with financial matters. What you probably don't know is it has more than 200 staff now, based at Friargate in Coventry, and the CEO and Chief Ombudsman, Caroline Wayman, joins us this evening. Caroline, hi.
Hi, Adam.
Thank you for bearing with us. Sorry, we're running over. We were told we got 15 minutes, so I thought we'd hang on to him for as long as we could. Just first of all, to outline us really the history and the function of the FOS.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, as you say, we were set up over 20 years ago. And I mean, I think when we were first set up, I think we had a kind of annual caseload of about 30,000 cases and about 450 people. We're now in total about 3,600 people, and our annual caseload's more like 300,000 cases every year. So it's really grown over time, and with a range of different issues that we've been grappling with over the years. But I mean, our basic job is to deal with, you know, financial complaints from consumers and small businesses, and so have the powers then to put things right when people haven't been treated fairly.
And is this prior to things going to court, or instead of things going to court, or do you try and solve it before that happens?
So I think we would call ourselves a sort of an informal alternative to the courts, and actually in retail financial services, because you lost me for a moment.
I did. Carry on though, don't worry.
Am I back?
You're
Yeah,
back.
sorry. Technology gremlins always happening. Sorry, you have to remind me, where were we?
Just sort of in the fact that you're the, if you like, if
alternative. Yeah.
I was going to say, if it was a divorce happening, you'd be the mediator, family mediator.
Kind of, actually, but more often we'd be the mediator and the decision maker, because actually most sort of retail financial services disputes would come to the financial ombudsman rather than going to court. And so we do have powers to make awards that are binding. So it's not just mediation. We can make a decision, and you know, the financial business needs to apply that. So we can make awards up to just over 350,000. So you know, we have got powers to put things right, and so we're sort of an informal alternative to the courts as opposed to a step beforehand.
And give us some typical, obviously just typical examples of cases brought, the sort of nature of them, and you know, how long it takes you to be able to bring them to conclusion.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, anything to do with money is probably the easiest way to think about it. So, you know, complaints about banking, insurance, investments, pensions, payday lending, PPI, payment protection insurance, has kept us very, very busy over the last few years. And our caseload is, you know, everything from quite straightforward customer service issue you're having with your bank, through to some very complex issues, for example, around fraud, or, you know, disputes around your pension. And so we have a really quite broad range, and you know, some of the most straightforward cases we can sort out in, you know, days or even hours. Sometimes some of our more complex cases can certainly take months.
And presumably you have spikes of things that you don't particularly realise are coming over the horizon, as you were saying. And I take it's been the same during COVID. Business interruption insurance, has that been a major spike for you?
Yeah, we've been really busy through the sort of COVID pandemic, and business interruption insurance has been one of the areas. I mean, we saw probably fewer cases than we would have done because of the FCA's test case that people may be familiar with, that they instigated. So that probably stemmed the flow quite a bit. Otherwise, we'd have seen a lot more. But other than that, we've been very busy also with things like travel insurance, wedding insurance, also a big kind of area.
Sorry to interrupt. So for the uninitiated, so people insure against their wedding being cancelled? Absolutely,
yes, yeah. And so you know, weddings, people spend an awful lot of money on weddings. Some people choose to do these days. So wedding insurance, something that in my many years at the Ombudsman Service has not really been a big feature. I've never before had to do any media interviews on wedding insurance, but we did ITV News in the summer on the subject because it has been quite a hot topic, believe it or not. So I guess things you'd expect that are a result of the pandemic. We've also just seen more people though who are, you know, in financial hardship and who have needed to kind of get arrangements in place for their sort of mortgage deferrals and things like that.
And do you get a flavour in times such as this where some people in the shadier parts of finance, what have you, does it become obvious to you early on where some people are being taken advantage of?
I mean, I think we're definitely on the front line of seeing where problems do arise, and you know, we sort of very much have a really important role in being able to sort of see those trends, and if we do see issues, we can obviously put things right for the individual who comes to us, but we also will share that back, particularly with the Financial Conduct Authority, who are the regulator for the sector. So if we do see trends or issues that we think are more systemic, then we will share those with the regulator, and so that, you know, any further action can be taken, so that not just the people who come to us get fairness, but also more generally customers are treated fairly.
And as the grand fromage of the organisation, how's COVID impacted on sort of the company, the organisation that you run? Forget what you do. How's it been flipped, working from home, or tell us how you've coped?
Yeah, no, I mean, like many people, I think, we've needed to kind of transform pretty much overnight from being a largely office-based operation. I mean, we've always had quite a lot of flexibility and home working as part of our offer, but, largely office-based across our offices in London and in Coventry. And, we kind of needed to achieve almost overnight the sort of thing that if my board had said to me, how long will it take to turn the whole operation into a home working on, I'd been getting out Gantt charts to show them it would take months and they'd have to pilot
strategies and
strategies and stuff, and instead actually we kind of managed to mobilize really quickly. We had to kind of close our phone lines for probably a day, I think, and then had them back up and running really quickly, and really proud of the way that we've responded, and our people have been brilliant. And and I think, as you've been touching on with some of the other panelists, lots of challenges for all our people, homeschooling, caring responsibilities, and certainly I think in this most recent lockdown we've seen more direct impact to our employees in terms of themselves getting COVID, but also family members and things like that. So it's enormously challenging, I think, for people, but very proud of how we've responded.
And as a boss, do you think, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, do you think for people psychologically the second lockdown has been harder because you didn't expect to be locked down again, or the second major lockdown, and also things such as weather and dark nights? Have you found for staff it's been more difficult this time around?
Yeah, definitely. And we survey our people regularly, and that's what we hear back from them. And I think we probably also say on a personal level, I think January's bad enough, isn't it? But being sort of locked in, and I think that sense for a lot of people, I think a lot of people have that sense of just get to Christmas, then all will be well. And then obviously I think the double whammy of Christmas not being quite as people perhaps had hoped for it to be, and also then as you say, the prospect of another lockdown, I think has been really challenging for people. And we've certainly been trying to encourage people to get out and have a walk at lunchtime, make sure you do kind of put regular breaks in the day, try and encourage people to really stay in touch with one another, because otherwise it can be really isolating, I think.
Well, it was better now. It was get to Christmas and you don't have to invite the in-laws round, so it was a win-win at that stage.
That's right, yeah.
And tell us about your presence in Coventry. What do folk there do? Why did you choose Coventry?
Yeah, we had an opportunity a few years ago. It was back in 2017. We needed to get some more office space, and so we're based in London largely for historic reasons, because the Financial Ombudsman is actually sort of an amalgamation of 8 previous schemes that did all sorts of different bits of financial services, and not all of them were in London. And so when created and growing, it's been there, but we needed more space, and I was quite determined that we should go somewhere other than London, and we wanted to get a presence that was just in a different part of the country. And we had a long list and then a short list. I think in the end it came down to either Coventry or Cardiff, and we picked Coventry. And delighted with the choice that we've made. I mean, I think we were really impressed when we were looking around with we're in the Frygate development.
Yeah.
We're really impressed with it. It's a great modern building. It's a fantastic connection. And the Midlands is a great area to be in terms of being able to recruit really high quality staff. And one of the things we wanted to be able to offer our people, and some of our people have relocated as well, as we've done a lot of recruitment locally as well, but for a lot of our people who are based in and around London, we've been able to offer them an alternative, which is to be able to move to a very nice area, which I know quite well, and be able to potentially buy property and really settle down in the Midlands, and that's been great.
I love the way you say Cardiff and Coventry. It's as if your relocation person started going through the alphabet and did Aberdeen, Birmingham, and then thought, I can't be bothered to go. I can't be bothered to go any further. Is it a presence that might grow over time in Coventry?
Yeah, I mean, and something we're very committed to in terms of the kind of longer term. I mean, we very much, and we started off actually mainly having some of our contractors based in Coventry, but it has always been our intention. And over the last year, we've recruited, I think, just less than 150 people in the area. So, you know, we're very much building up our presence. And I think, you know, one of the great sort of build-ons from the home working experience is that although, you know, I think we've got about just over 300 desks in Friday, that doesn't need to be 300 people. That could be any number of people. That's always been part of the longer term vision, that it's a base that we can use to grow our presence and to be able to, we hope, be a really, you know, good recruiter in the area, and it's something we're committed to in the long term.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. I have to say, Caroline was all set to join us just before lockdown, weren't you, for the meeting
right.
back last March. So thank you for sticking with it. I do appreciate it. And thank you for telling us about the service. Thank you very much indeed. Caroline Wayman, everybody. Just a couple of notes to bring you. They've been mentioned before, but the 2021, the University Hospital Coventry Warwickshire charity is staging an overseas challenge, the Mont Blanc Trek across France, Italy and Switzerland this September. Andy Hardy, who we had on in the very early days, if you remember, the senior figure at the hospital talking about COVID, he's taking part, and they're looking for others to join him. If you're after a fitness target, now that we're beginning to be released, and also to raise money at the same time for an extremely good cause, please do check it out on their website. Obviously, we're operating still in very different times economically. If you're a business and in need of advice, please do consult the Find It in CW website, which also, since its launch, has featured 400 opportunities with a value of £691 million. The Growth Hub, the Chamber, other partners are behind that website, so please do have a look at it. Our next meeting is on March 31st, when we hope, fingers crossed, to be back streaming live, this time from the Telegraph Hotel, Coventry. And we've already secured Professor John Latham, the Vice-Chancellor and CEO of Coventry University, to talk through how the university's fared and also, hopefully, how it's going to prosper in the future. And we have 3 new champions as part of our network who have joined. So thank you very much to Ferrari Dynamics, Integrity Wealth Solutions and CJD Consultancy. Thank you to all of them. Thank you everybody for joining us today. As I say, hopefully the last Zoom session we'll be having. Please stay safe, and we're looking forward to meeting every one of you on the other side of this difficult time. In the meantime, join us on March the 31st, and please, for the rest of the week, tell someone something positive about Coventry and Warwickshire. Thank you very much indeed.